Imagine a cold winter morning in December 1968. The streets of Tokyo. The air was foggy, and silence stretched far and wide. A white van was slowly moving along the road. Inside, 4 bank employees sat quietly. With them was $8 million in cash, the year-end salaries of thousands of Tokyo Electric Company employees. Everything seemed perfectly normal. No danger, no suspicion. But within a few minutes, what was about to happen would become the most shocking robbery in Japan's history. As the van approached Fuchu Prison Road, suddenly, a police motorcycle appeared from behind. Flashing lights, the sound of a siren, and the stern voice of a policeman. "Stop the vehicle. A threatening letter has been received by the bank. There's a report that a bomb has been planted in this van." The driver and the employees panicked. They looked ahead. The policeman got off his bike. He wore leather gloves, a gun belt around his waist. Everything about him looked completely real. He bent down to look under the van, and suddenly, smoke started rising from the ground. White smoke, as if an explosion was about to happen. The employees immediately jumped out, stepping back in fear. "Stay away, the van might explode," the officer shouted. Terrified, everyone ran. But in the very next moment, the same policeman opened the van's door, sat in the driver's seat, and calmly started the engine. Before anyone could understand what was happening, the van disappeared. In just a few minutes, $8 million in cash was gone. By the time the employees realized something was wrong, it was already too late. When the police arrived, they found nothing but an empty street and traces of burnt smoke. Panic spread across Tokyo. The newspapers screamed headlines, "Japan's biggest robbery in history." People couldn't believe it. Without any weapon, without violence, and without help, how could someone vanish with so much money? And that was the beginning of the story that would haunt Japan's police, media, and citizens for decades. The man who called himself a policeman was, in truth, someone who fooled the entire world and disappeared. More than 50 years have passed, but neither the van was ever found, nor the money, nor that man. And that remains the biggest mystery of all. Tokyo, 1968. A city changing faster than ever before. Every street glowed with electric lights. New cars sped across every road, and people's lives were no longer the same. Only 20 years had passed since World War II, yet Japan had risen from the ashes and once again shone brightly on the world map. Factories ran day and night. New companies were being established, and the glow of hope had returned to people's faces. It was during this era that big companies like Tokyo Electric began rewarding their employees with generous year-end bonuses. It was December, the season of festivals, the time of joy. But within that joy, a day was about to come that would forever be written in Japan's history. That morning, a small transport van moved slowly through the streets of Tokyo. Inside were 4 bank employees. On each face was the seriousness of their responsibility, because the money they carried was no small amount, $8 million in cash, today worth more than 20. It was the hard-earned bonus of thousands of Tokyo Electric Company workers. The van looked ordinary, white in color, with heavy metal cash boxes stacked in the back. Each box was locked and sealed with the company's stamp. The 4 employees were on their way to deliver the money safely to the bank, where it was to be distributed the next day. At that time, Japan's concept of security was still new. Motorcycle police, security vans, radio communication, these were all recent developments. People believed that in such a modern city, robbery was almost impossible, but perhaps that very confidence became someone's greatest opportunity. Even the air that day felt strange. It was a cold December morning, a light fog lingering in the air. The roads were wet. It had rained a little while ago. The van moved toward the suburbs of Fuchu, where a small branch of the bank was located. The employee sitting beside the driver kept glancing out of the window again and again, as if restless. He didn't know that in just a few minutes, he was about to witness the strangest and most terrifying scene of his life. The city was changing fast, but human greed remained the same. The war had changed the city, but not the cunning and desire inside human heart. Only the face of that greed had changed, and that day someone hiding behind that new face was about to commit the most mysterious robbery in history. From a distance, the sound of a motorcycle engine began to echo. The sound grew louder as it neared the... Inside, the 4 employees looked at one another nervously. The driver pressed the brakes, and the van stopped at the roadside. The police motorcycle came to a halt right in front of them. The policeman's helmet gleamed with an official insignia. A revolver hung from his belt, and a red light flare stick glowed at his waist. He looked no less than a real officer. He got off his bike swiftly, and said in a firm voice, "Stop the vehicle. A bomb threat has been reported from the bank. It's possible this van has been rigged with explosives." The 4 employees were stunned, speechless. The driver lowered the window and said, "Sir, we're from Nihon Shintaku Bank. We're on our way to deliver salaries to Toshiba factory." The policeman interrupted sharply. "I know, these are the vehicles in danger. I'm from Fuchu police station. Step out. I need to inspect the van." One by one, all 4 men got out. There was light fog on the road, and the cold wind brushed against their faces. The policeman crouched down, pretending to inspect under the van. "Stay alert. The explosion could happen any second," he warned. Fear was written clearly on their faces. One of them asked nervously, "Should we step back?" The policeman nodded. "Yes, everyone move away." He bent under the van again, pulled something from his belt, and within seconds a huge cloud of smoke erupted. Red and yellow flares burst out, as if a bomb had exploded beneath the vehicle. The 4 men panicked. They ran behind the van. Someone shouted, "Run! The van is about to explode." Within seconds, chaos broke out on the street. People started running in every direction, while the policeman stood there calmly. He quietly turned off his torch, looked at the direction of the smoke, and with precise measured steps, opened the door of the van. He peeked inside. All 4 cash boxes were still there. Then he sat in the driver's seat, turned the ignition, and the engine started. He smiled. A faint, cold smile. As if nothing had happened, he slowly turned the van onto the road. Behind him, the 4 bank employees were still running. One of them looked back. The van was still there. But the very next moment, hidden behind a cloud of smoke, it disappeared. A few minutes later, when the smoke cleared, the road was empty. No policeman, no van, only 4 shocked and trembling men standing there, surrounded by the cold winter wind. One of them asked in a trembling voice, "Where did the van go?" Just a few minutes ago, the same van had been carrying $8 million. Now there was nothing, only smoke and silence. They immediately called the police station. But when the real police arrived, they were stunned. No footprints, no witness statements, no fingerprints, nothing. Even the tire marks had been washed away by the rain. It was as if everything had vanished like magic. Later, when the investigation began, it was discovered that the policeman who had stopped the van wasn't a real officer at all. He was a thief in disguise, calm, confident, and perfectly prepared. Not a single person suspected a thing. The van, which carried an amount worth about $25 million in today's value, was gone within minutes. No chase, no gunfire, no noise, just a 10-minute story that would go on to haunt Japan for the next 50 years. In just 10 minutes, the greatest mystery in Japan's history was written. A fake policeman, 4 honest bank employees, and a vanished $8 million. From that day on, one question echoed across Tokyo. Who was that man? No one had seen his face clearly. No camera had recorded anything. No witness ever came forward. All that was known was that he had arrived on a police motorcycle, and from that same road, he had stolen history itself. Slowly, night fell. Tokyo's streets lit up again, but that day's story remained unfinished. A few hours later, in the cold afternoon air of Tokyo's suburbs, news came in. A van had been found parked on the roadside, completely empty. The doors were open, all the cash boxes were gone, and only traces of burned smoke remained on the seats. The police arrived, sirens echoed through the air. People stood at a distance, watching. It was the same van that had left the bank in the morning, and mysteriously vanished soon after. Everyone was stunned at the sight. Someone had treated the entire system like a game. The investigation began. The van's lock wasn't broken. The engine was intact. Even the keys were still inside. It looked as though whoever had done this knew every single detail beforehand. By evening, the story had taken over the newspapers. The phantom policeman strikes, Japan's largest robbery without a gun, the disappearing $8 million. It was all anyone could talk about on television, on the radio, in homes, offices, even school. Some said it must have been a movie shoot. Others believed it was an inside job, Every motorcycle cop on Tokyo's streets was now looked at with suspicion. People whispered, "Who knows if he's a real policeman or the ghostly thief himself?" The government immediately formed a special task force of hundreds of officers. Every police station received circulars. Every bank and courier company was warned, "Do not follow any order unless it's verified." But the real question wasn't where the money went, it was how. Because whoever did this had outsmarted Japan's most disciplined system with sheer intelligence. And in a country like Japan, where trains run exactly on time, where honesty is a matter of pride, such a perfect deception shook everyone to the core. In a nation where punctuality is like religion, no one had ever imagined a crime executed with such flawless precision. The police now realized this wasn't just a robbery, it had become a national humiliation. Tokyo's police swore, "We will find him." But they didn't know, the man they were chasing wasn't an ordinary thief. He was someone who had already thought through every move, every suspicion, every possible step, and so began the biggest manhunt in Japan's history. Police sirens echoed across all of Tokyo. The government ordered, "Solve this case at any cost." What had first seemed like a strange mystery had now turned into the largest investigation Japan had ever seen. Nearly 170,000 police officers were assigned to this single case, a number never seen before. Posters, sketches, and notices were spread across the country. "Have you seen this man? Have you seen anyone riding a motorcycle in a police uniform?" Every day, newspapers printed new headlines: "The ghost of Fuchu, the phantom policeman, the invisible thief." People's imagination had now turned him into a legend. The police interrogated nearly 110,000 people, drivers, bank employees, ex-soldiers, ordinary citizens, but everyone's answer was the same: "I didn't do it." Slowly, small clues began to surface. From garbage piles, the police recovered torn pieces of a police uniform, motorcycle parts, and flare canisters, the same kind that produced smoke. Investigators believed these were the items the fake policeman had used. Then one day, they found something else: a gold wristwatch. The story suddenly took a new turn. It was said that the watch might belong to the suspect seen on the motorcycle that day. But a few weeks later, it was revealed that the watch was a fake clue, a red herring meant to mislead the investigation. With every new lead came a new confusion. Sometimes a man would walk into the station and claim, "I am the thief." But after questioning, it turned out he only wanted fame. Some suspects couldn't handle the pressure and ended their own lives. Families were torn apart, lives were destroyed. But the real thief, he remained in the air, like a shadow. Psychologists and crime experts tried to create a psychological profile of the man. They said he was calm, composed, and deeply knowledgeable about police systems. He might once have been part of the police or a security agency himself. Because no ordinary person could perfectly copy a uniform, know the right protocols, and act out a fake bomb threat so convincingly, people began calling him the ghost policeman. He never fired a bullet. He never hurt anyone. He simply took advantage of the system's trust and disappeared. One officer said, if he had carried out his plan even a few minutes late, he might have been caught. But every second was already thought out. Time began to pass. Every clue started disappearing into the dark. Every witness either took back their statement or forgot what they had seen. In the police files, only hundreds of photographs, reports, maps, and questions were left, but not a single answer. People had now begun to consider this case a mystery. Some said he escaped to another country. Some said he could never be caught because he was too clever. And slowly, the biggest investigation in Japan's history became nothing more than an unsolved story. Every clue turned into a mystery, as if the man had vanished into thin air. The first big news came from a young boy that shocked everyone. He was the son of a police officer, only 17 years old. His body was found in a small apartment. Near him was a note, in which he had written that he helped in the robbery. Initially, the police thought the case was clear. But as soon as they looked at the evidence, things became tangled. The statements written in the note were very weak. There was no solid proof that he had actually taken part in the robbery. Still, the media made it a headline and people's imagination gave the story a new twist. Meanwhile, in Japan's underworld, old names started surfacing. Some former Yakuza members were called for questioning. These people had always been surrounded by rumors of being behind big incidents, But even after intense investigation, no solid evidence was found. There wasn't a single piece of proof that these former Yakuza members were actually involved in the robbery. Then, a new theory shocked everyone. Could it be possible that the information about the robbery was leaked from the inside? Maybe from a bank employee or someone from the police department. That thought scared people even more. Nobody was sure, and this uncertainty made the case even more mysterious. As time passed, the public's obsession with the robbery grew. Newspapers, TV and radio began presenting new stories every day. In children's comics, the thief was shown as a hero. Movies were made about him and books described his deeds in thrilling ways. Slowly, that thief was no longer just a man. He became part of Japan's imagination. People thought about him, dreamed about him, and everyone tried to guess his next move. For years, the case remained open. The police worked on every new clue. But every time, the case slipped away somewhere. No one was caught. No one was proven guilty. Yet the curiosity of the public and the media never faded. As years went by, that thief became immortal in the imagination of the Japanese people. Sometimes it felt like the biggest theft wasn't of money, but of imagination, and that's exactly what happened. The criminal may have stolen millions of dollars, but he left behind a story that Japan could never forget. As years went on, the robbery stopped being just an event. It became a mind game. By 1975, the case was legally closed. The statute of limitations, the time limit after which no one can be legally charged, had expired. The police openly admitted defeat. The money was never recovered, and the robbery remained only in stories and legends. For the police, this loss was not just the end of a case, it was also a lesson. Japan's legal system learned from this incident. Banks and courier companies introduced new security protocols. Every employee's identity began to be verified carefully. New rules were made for sending and receiving money. The police improved their investigation methods too. No one wanted such a mistake to ever happen again. But what was most fascinating was the public's reaction. That robbery was not just about money. It made people think and question. People began to admire the thief's cleverness. Slowly, the incident became a part of pop culture. In films, books, and TV shows, it was called the perfect crime. People began to see it as an ideal crime, one where no one was caught, and no money was recovered. For the people of Japan, this story was not just about the police's failure. It was a challenge that made everyone think, if one man could show such intelligence, then what are the limits of society and law? Children heard the story and imagined it. Writers and filmmakers drew inspiration from his deed. Gradually, that thief became part of the country's collective imagination. Sometimes it feels like the biggest theft isn't of wealth. Sometimes the biggest theft is of trust, of the system, and even of our own thinking. And that's what happened in this case. The robbery didn't just put the police under question, it made the whole country think. Every ordinary person began to wonder how fragile the balance between security, law, and human intelligence really is. That thief, who stole millions of dollars, ultimately became a mystery. The money may have disappeared somewhere, but the story he left behind in society's mind lived forever. Every time people think of this incident, they don't just remember the robbery, they feel the unease and thrill of that entire era. And that's how the perfect crime was born. A robbery that caught no one, that no one could prove, but that forced an entire nation to think, to question, and to imagine. Japan's police accepted defeat, the law showed its limit, and the people made this story immortal in their imagination. That's why even today, people remember it, read about it, make films on it, and sometimes ask themselves, if that thief were still alive today, what would his next move be? The robbery that didn't just challenge the police, it challenged an entire nation. They say that fake police officer may no longer be alive, but his name will live forever. The man who stole